So I wanted to make a video again, sharing some more information. To my belief, I think, I know that, pretty sure there's, for quite some time now, that someone else is doing the dividing, right? And the only way that I think that it can help in any way, form, is I say anything that I can remember, drawings that I think could be preciously valuable to separate who's telling the truth, lies, and figure out how they're going to do it. But I know that I don't have any power other than to say that this happened, this is what's going on, this is how the story went. Some of it isn't going to be verifiable. In fact, a lot of it isn't, and a lot of it is. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about that seems to have been brought to my attention is probably one of the most eureka moments that you're probably going to find how corrupted the police department is in Frankie getting raped. And I can verify this with my mother about the twins. When I was about 6 to 7 years old, there used to be right down. Let's see, three houses down from where we live. There's an alley in a sewer, and when I was a kid, I don't think I was older than 8 years old, because I think that's when these people moved out. But there was two identical twins that lived right next door to the alley. And one of the ways that I knew is because when I was a kid, we used to a few times that I had taken the alley, which was a shortcut to between the houses, to then walk back uphill to the house. And I never really took that road or that shortcut too many times. I always preferred just going the normal routes. But I recall that there was two identical twins, very tall black girls. Two black girls that were very tall, identical twins, and they lived at that house. And I remember my mother being very delighted. And she's like, "Oh, yeah, some twins." And then all of a sudden, I remember my mother sitting on the couch and started to get sort of like very depressed. And like, I want to say that it was so long ago, I want to say that she had maybe a small number of tears, but not coming down from her face, or she did, but she absolutely didn't say anything. And she just said, "Oh, these twins." And you can verify who lived at that house by the real estate people who rented that house, because I don't think they owned the house, but it was a black family. I don't think there was a man that lived there. It was a woman, the mother, that worked long hours, is what I think I remember. And she worked for a nursing home or for hospice or something like that. But I want to say she worked. I think I remember seeing her. When I'm telling you this memory, I only saw this lady, the mother, like probably 3 times my whole life. And they probably lived at that house probably for a couple of years. They went to Good Elementary for a short period of time. But I do remember that these two black girls were identical twins, and I remember seeing them, but they were very tall. They had very long legs, and I remember they used to wear shorts all the time, like high shorts. But they were very tall. They were like giants, and the mother was very tall as well. And the mother, I remember seeing her, and she had like a medical outfit, but I don't think she was a nurse. She could have been a nurse, but I don't think she did. She worked something in the medical field, but I want to say I think it was a nursing home, like sort of the back end of the medical field. And I remember, I want to say my mother, she did start to cry. And there was no reason for her to start crying. There was no arguments. I'm 8 years old, okay? By this time, my dad isn't like binge drinking all the time. and she's just at the house, and she just gets emotional. She's like, and the way that she expresses when I say, "Oh, hey, mom, sabes que hay twins para allá," he's, "Oh, I know." And she got very teary and was crying on the couch. And I kept on telling her, and I kept on saying, like, "What's wrong? What happened?" I mean, like, if somebody just started crying, your mother, and she doesn't tell, that's what it was. Like, there was no fights, there was nothing. This had nothing to do, to my understanding, of Frankie rapes, anything, predators. She was reflecting on the twins. You can verify this by looking up the real estate records. I know those are very verifiable, what do you call it, when they verifiable, to be able to look at those records to see who lived there. And it was two black twins, and I'm going to say there was more than just identical twins, because they used to go outside and play all the time. They would go outside and play. They were pretty active kids. And I want to say there was one boy and maybe one other girl. So I think there was a total of like 4 kids. At least 3 kids lived there. But I'm going to say I think it was 4 of them. And it was a single mother, and she worked, I don't know who it was that told me this, but I remember this telling me that lady, she worked long hours. She worked like 12 hours plus hours at the hospital she worked. And I would imagine there wasn't a guy that lived there that I remember. There could have been a boyfriend, there could have been, but I remember saying this, and I think that, you can't verify me telling you my mother was crying, but I could not figure out why my mother was, and I was like, "What's wrong? What happened?" "No, nada, and she was like this, like, she didn't like the fact that her twins were separated, which is my brother, Julian. Well, he's technically my half brother, but the group brother I grew up with, and he is identical twins. So I thought that this would be the only thing that you can verify about this is there's 2 very tall black twins. They're very tall, and I remember I wanted to say that they weren't in the same grade as Frankie. They could have been, I don't know, but they were just really tall. There were like 2 black girls that were just tall, and they looked very robust, healthy. And the mother was very robust as well, very, very healthy, or I would say very just tall, like. And like I said, I don't know who was it, because right next door to this, between this alley, there was Ivan's house, there was my cousin's house, or one of my cousin's houses, and which I never associated with, or they weren't my cousin, but it was like, my mom told me it was like my dad's first wife, like second cousin. It was like way down the line. Anyway, this old man Joe used to live there, and he used to come by our house and talk to my dad. He's a Mexican guy. But next door to that was a white guy that stayed locked up in his house. It kind of looked like a Freddy Krueger house, because this guy never came out of his house. He was like a loner house, and he just lived all by himself. And he had these jet skis. We just refer to him as the jet ski house, because he had these old school jet skis always parked in his garage, and nothing ever moved. The grass was all dried up, and he really didn't take care of the house. And but he was probably about, I would say, in his late 40s. And I remember knocking on that guy's house, a couple houses down. His eyes were always bloodshot red. I don't know if he was doing drugs or what, but he was bloodshot red. And I know he knew something about the rapes. This is something that's very, very unique and very unbelievable, because this guy never came out of his house. He never saw this guy. I mean, he'd show up and park his car, and that was it. He drove, I think, a Ford Explorer of some kind, I think, if I remember. Like a green or black or dark blue, like a dark color Explorer of some kind. But next door to that was a kid by the name of a family. It was a white guy and a Mexican lady that had a kid, and the little boy was called Justin. I used to go to that house. When I was like in 5th or 6th grade, and she took me to school every once in a while, and I used to go play with that kid every once in a while. I know that they had like four-wheelers, but I really didn't associate with the kid too much because he was like a couple years younger than me, and it was just kind of, I felt outfitted. But I do remember being babysitted or staying at that house for maybe a couple weeks or something, like after school, and I don't know what it was. I don't know what the situation, but she was a Mexican lady, but she barely knew how to speak Spanish. She was like white American. But anyway, that was Justin's house. There was the alley, and then there was a house there, and those were the two twins, and they only lived in a house, I wouldn't say no more at max, like 3 years, 2 or 3 years that I can recall, because I was very young. And I don't know who it was, if it was like Justin's mother or something, that just said that, yeah, that lady works a lot of hours, like she's never there. And I'd seen her come home like at 6 o'clock, you know, and 6 or 7 o'clock late, and she just worked long hours at the medical field. I don't know what she did. I never played with those kids. I would see them, and it was recognizable because there were twins. There were two tall black twins. There were two really tall girls, and they went to good elementary. So I wanted to say, next door to that house, or 2 houses down, this is where the eureka moment is going to, when I talk about how Frankie was being brutally raped. No one, I don't know if I put enough of this video. I know that I've drawn videos about this, or I've drawn some sort of pictures about this, and I did say slightly about it, but it's very hard to retract this type of memory, because there's also more important things that I need to think about, and that isn't, you know, I'll come back to that and be like, okay, well, you need to look into this house as well. Well, this guy at this house, I'm going to post the picture of his house in the address. You can look up the medical records, you can look up real estate records, and find out who owned and lived at that house. Now, this is when Jason Beckwith, okay, those 2 black girls, they moved out of that house, life moved on, but this is probably years later. It was like 5 years later, 6 years later. I'm in 5th grade. Yeah, I'm gonna say I was in 4th or 5th grade, and I wasn't in 6th grade yet. I was, because they had already moved out. I was in 4th or 5th grade for sure. And I used to hang out with Jason Beckwith. Jason Beckwith is the kid that actually called the police when he was looking over the fence, because he was scared that Frankie was going to get hurt. And he told me this. And I remember looking from a far distance, and I saw somebody with a white, you know, cordless phone, because he used to sleep in the backyard in a camper many years ago. And it wasn't because he wanted to my understanding, but he used to sleep in a camper in his backyard because he wanted to, for some reason. He was kind of like a camping person. And he was really built. Like, he was an outdoorsman person. He really enjoyed the outdoors a lot. And anyway, we used to go talk about, he met my mom several times, and you know, he showed me how to work on bikes, you know, the mechanics of how to fix your chains and all that stuff, and we used to hang out all the time. And his sister is who I went to school with, Amy Beckwith. I talk about Jason Beckwith I saw when I was homeless in Seattle, Washington one day at a Subway, and I didn't say anything, and I just kind of froze, and I just looking at him, I just saw him, and he just looked at me like he knew who I was, and I guess he was waiting for me to say something, and he was like pretty far away from me. He was like 20 yards away from me, and there wasn't too many people, and he just went over by like a bus scanner, and he just goes and just scans it, and then he just kind of walks up, and he kind of had this grin on him like he knew who I was, but didn't say anything, like, yeah, I remember, you know, kind of, but, you know, and then I just stayed on this, just kind of looking, I'm like, damn, that looks like Jason. Anyway, but I'm about 13 years old. I'm about 12 to 13 years old. I would say anywhere from, because I was in 4th or 5th grade, so like 10 to 12 years old. This is before my dad's suicide. It could have been right after, but I don't think, you know, it was before. It was before his suicide, because toward the end of my dad, right when my dad committed suicide, I had to stop hanging. Jason Beckwith ended up moving within like 6 months, and he said he was moving to New York. So, it was a sad farewell goodbye at the time because I was really good friends with him. But I'm 2 houses down from these twins. It's either I'm going to say it's 2 houses down. I don't think it's one house and then it's another house. So it's 2 houses down. There is a sheriff's department, a cop car that used to park there all the time. It isn't a cop car. It looks like a cop car at the time, but it's a fire department. The guy was like the chief of the manager or something at the fire department in Carrollton, Texas. And the guy, you could see his cop car right there all the time. And because he'd come and drive home in his fire. It's not the design of a cop car. It has the fire department or marshal department. He wasn't a cop, but he worked something. I want to say he was in the fire department, but he drove one of those cars, and it had like the little fire department. It had the headlights, but it wasn't like designed like the same as cops do. It was like I guess they used it for the chief or the manager that works there. And he used to park there all the time. And there was nobody that lived in that house. It was an old man that looked like Ken Cooper, white lady as well. And they had a white house, and the house was always clean. The clean yards and everything was nice and tidy. And in that house, there was a guy that had moved in for a while, and his name was Larry. Larry was a BMX. He was used to be was pretty close to nearly a professional BMX rider. He used to do he was the guy that you can verify what I'm talking about by Richard Nicholson. I know Richard Nicholson supposedly, to my understanding, went to prison for child pornography. But before this, Richard Nicholson used to hang out with me and Jason Beckwith. We used to go riding bikes all the time, and he saved up all his money from working at the concession stand. He bought himself like a $350 bike. This is why I don't believe that he was a bad person. But I don't know what the story is. So me and Jason used to all hang out and ride our bikes together. And anyway, you can ask Richard Nicholson and Jason Beckwith to verify this. But there's a guy named Larry, and he used to sort of gather up, and this guy was like 25 years old, like 27, I think. He was like 25, at least 25 to 30 years old, at least 25 to 30 years old, maybe even older than that, but I'm going to say 25 to 30 years old. And this guy was really, really skinny. He was really skinny, seemed to be in pretty good shape. He looked like he did probably a lot of sort of mechanical, work at some point in his life. He used to do a lot of crazy stuff on bikes, but he wasn't dressed up. His appearance didn't look like a radical, punk rock type of, skateboarder or BMX rider. His looks looked pretty old-fashioned, like country boy kind of. And I recall that we were there, and for some reason, I don't know why Jason and Richard Nicholson even associated with this guy, and he used to see us riding bikes all the time, and I was the only Mexican kid. So I ended up going there, and I was very uneasy about the situation, because I always can tell the sense whether a white person wants me there, and they're white supremacists. Like they're bound to be like, they keep your shit white, and they don't like it when they see me with other white kids. Like I can tell the difference. Like we picked that up very young when I was very young. And I kind of got that vibe a little bit. But Jason was a very different person. He particularly wasn't, he didn't care. So, anyway, I'm with Richard Nicholson, and we go to his house. We don't go to his house. We're riding up and down the streets, and he's like hanging out in front of the garage door open. And somehow he sort of lures us. I don't know what the situation was, and then I see, it was weird because I'm hanging out with Jason for at least a couple of years, and then this guy just shows up, and that house had always been there. But this guy named Larry was a BMX rider, and he went bike riding a couple of times with Jason and Richard Nicholson. He was the guy And it was him, and maybe, I don't know who else it was. Could have been also Richard Nicholson. It was Larry and maybe one of his other friends he brought. Built a huge mound of dirt. And you know that nursing home right across the street from Roberts Riding off of Cherrywood and Denton Road in Jackson? At that nursing home, we were going to end up taking my father to, but Frankie wanted to take him to there, but we ended up not doing that. Because Frankie was the person that was going to decide where we were going to put our dad in a nursing home, and it was one of the most unbelievable, painful, humiliating, destroying situations for me, because my mom and him were going to nursing homes trying to figure out where to put him because he couldn't take care of himself. And they were thinking about going, okay, well, that nursing home, my grandma went to that nursing home, and my grandma went to that nursing home, and this is the last time I saw her before I went to London to support the DMC competitions for all the ones that were competitors, and kind of give it a wraps up that for myself there. And it was just something for those that were dedicated in doing that. So I went to that nursing home before I left. Well, that nursing home, at the back of that nursing home, there was an open field. It was before that church, the Muslim church, was built. There was a huge mound of dirt that Larry got a shovel, and some other people pounded the dirt, and there was already dirt in that area because they were planning to do construction for some period of time, and it was there for like 6 months, or for like almost a year. But it was a big mound of dirt, and they made it 2 mounds of dirt. One dirt, and then 2 mounds of dirt, where there was 2 mounds of dirt where you could jump, and there was an open gap, and then you could land on the other dirt mound. And Larry, I'd seen him, I went bike riding with him once, and for like 30 minutes, just to go check it out to the nursing home. He said that him and a few other people built, I think it was like Richard Nicholson, and this guy was doing backflips on the dirt mound. I'm not kidding you. This guy was like, I watch him and he'd ride and do a full-blown backflip and then land it. And it was a regular thing. He made it look real easy. This guy could bunny hop, drastically high, jump very high on a bike. And anyway, so for like a month or two, I wouldn't say it would last in a month or two. Once a week I'd go and I'd happen to be riding my bike and I'd see Jason and I'd sort of just pull up. Or we'd be riding on a bike and this guy would always, hey Jason, or whatever. But I was sort of the tag along, because I was younger, and Larry was more interested sort of to try to find out information. And it was weird, because why are you 25 to 30 years old hanging around 14-year-old kids riding a bike? Well, guess what? Remember what Miguel did? Remember Michael Jackson? Okay, so this is how the police department was in on Frankie getting raped and played in on this. There was, at least in one situation, where one day that I over there, and it was like once a week I went there, maybe every 2 weeks, we happened to be riding our bikes and he sparked up a conversation. And the fire department guy that worked at it shows up, and I want to say he was either about to retire or did retire. And he pulls up in his car, and he's with his wife, or could have been by himself. I'm going to say he was with some other lady who's also old, and this guy's no longer alive. And this guy ended up, when he saw me, he knew exactly who I was, and he knew about the rapes. 100% about this. This guy that worked for the fire department, remember I told you that there was a fire department that showed up one day when Frankie was in the fire department was punking out Frankie, and Mickey and Miguel ran into the house along with Diana. Well, they were training Frankie to accept that he had been raped. And I watched this in front of me, and the fire department was very nervous at me because I was running around and I was spying on the situation, and I looked directly over on the fire department the day that this is like a couple of years after I talked to Larry, or like a year or two after, and this is all this time frame between 8 years old to 11 years old. But anyway, that's what I talked about, that story, the fire department story. But guess what? Before that incident, there were right within, I'd say within a year of that incident, of the fire department incident, is when I go over to this guy's house, this fire department guy. When I go there, he does not want to look at my face, and he looks very ashamed. This guy's gay. I'm pretty sure he is. And this guy looks very ashamed, like, because all these other adults, they also believe that I could have been raped or was raped. So if when you're raped, you're gonna remember that. You're gonna remember that very intensely. I don't remember being raped. More of anything, I remember being punched and by Miguel. But it happened so fast, and how everything ended up happening. But I thought it was important for me to talk about, because when we go to this guy's house, he pulls up in his driveway, and we're talking to Larry, and this guy, he keeps sort of his head down, and he's trying to be very sneaky, and this is what he does. This is what this guy does. When this guy sees me, he's just kind of like he's sort of doesn't want to make face contact with me, and he's sort of walking very fast, like he doesn't want nobody to, like me to catch this guy. When I'm watching him to go inside his house, right, as he's walking, I'm on my bike, I'm going to say it was Jason or Richard Nicholson, but I'm going to say I think it was just with Jason. I think Larry was having a conversation, and he does this as he's walking very quickly, like trying to hide his face and very ashamed. I could tell this guy was like, oh no, we gotta protect our gays, one of our gays fucked a little boy, and he's like trying to get into the house. And he does, when he closes the door, this is what he does. He walks in and goes, like he very quickly tries to shut the door so that I can't get a recognition, but he makes a very quick glance at me as he's doing this. Now, this guy worked for the fire department. This guy it was a fire department with some sort of fire department manager at a police station, but it wasn't a full-blown cop car. And I wanted to talk about this because Frankie continued getting raped. This is when that incident happened. Jason moved out of Carrollton when right after my dad's suicide, like 5 months afterwards, and I was 12 years old. I was like 13. No, I was probably early 13 years old. I was somewhere around 13 to 14 years old when we moved out. I moved right after my dad's suicide because I remember him going to DeWitt Perry, and I saw him at DeWitt Perry, and I was 14 years old at that time. He was with Jeremy Lewis, and they just walking through their old middle school just for fun. So anyway, I go there. Jason. See, we're at that house, right? We go to this house, and Jason moved when I was about late 13 years old. I was 13 years old when he left. That incident that happened with Larry and this fire department marshal guy, I was 11 years old. I was in fourth or fifth grade. I wasn't in sixth grade. I was either in fourth or fifth grade when that happened, because I was in fifth grade when I started hanging around Jason when he moved. So it could have been late fourth grade when I met Jason when he finally moved in. But just to be on the safe side, I was in fifth grade, and when I was in fifth grade, that's when that incident happened. It wasn't too long. It was within 1 year of knowing Jason. I was not in sixth grade because I was too old at that time, by that point in time. But this guy, Larry, he knows about the rape that Miguel did. He knows about it. And this guy is acting sort of paranoid because he thinks that I'm also the one that got raped. Because you got to keep in mind that Miguel may have raped Frankie and did the punching and the punking out for so many years since a little kid, but it doesn't change the fact that they probably don't know the details and how much he did to me and exactly how many times he did Frank. They know it happened and could have happened a couple of times. They do know that, but they don't know the very details of it. So when they see me, they think it happened to me. So this guy starts to act sort of paranoid, and he starts asking questions. Jason, I don't know how much you can verify this, but he starts asking questions about me. And I don't know if he says something about Michael Jackson. I want to say that he might have. And this guy's communicating with the fire department guy. This guy. This guy's like 25 to 30 years old. Very skinny, but he doesn't look like he could be an undercover at all. I mean, he smokes cigarettes, and if I remember correctly, that guy, that fire department guy, he got colon cancer, or he got cancer, and he made a recovery. I don't know if I think he made a recovery, I remember hearing, and then I don't know if it happened again, and cancer came back and it ended his life. But I think you want to say that this is very important to verify this. You can look up medical records, you can look up the situation with this, because that guy, the lady that lived there in there knew about and were asking questions about me because Jason said something about this. Jason told me, because Jason had a tendency to sort of be protective a little bit around me, toward me, because I was younger, and he was real muscular and big. Like Jason was, some kids are born very strong, very just naturally strong. He was one of those kids, and he hardly didn't ever lift weights, but he was just born strong. And that's what the situation was with that. And Jason Beckwith, Daniel Box knew who he is, Brian Yockey knows, he knew who Robert Girardi was, Jeremy Lewis knew him very well. But I wanted to talk about this because I remember Jason telling me that the guy was asking a lot of questions about me. And he goes, yeah, man, he's asking a lot of questions about you. He goes, and wondering, and Jason was a sort of an intriguing person if somebody started asking a lot of questions. So, and I wanted to say this because this shows the highest level of corruption and pedophile, because they were in contact with Ken Cooper. This is white supremacy. This is white hair, blonde hair cowboy Ken Cooper do for the mascot White Power. And it's this alliance of whiteness. That's what that is. So I wanted to say this because Frankie, when we went to his house, I was in 5th grade. That was probably toward later down, the number of years. Probably like, if I was in 5th grade, I think the last time Frankie got raped was somewhere when he was about 13 or 14 years old. And it was, I think the last person that ever raped Frankie was either at my Tia Licha's house or it was at the bar. And Frankie was like 13 years old at that time. Frankie was like 13 years old. This is where I talk about that there was a guy that were following us in the bar when my dad went drinking at VFW, and they were following my dad and trying to start up conversations. And there was a guy that looked exactly white boy, blonde hair, blue eye, and this is the guy that showed up when we were playing pool. And this guy was raping Frankie in the back. And I talked about this, that I didn't see, I just saw shadows. And I told him they were just moving their pants very fast. And Frankie just, he moved his pants up. And this guy was like in his like 40s, early 40s, maybe late 30s, at best late 30s. But he was somewhere about 38 to probably 47 years old. And I talked about his figure. He looks same body shape as Ken Cooper. And I think it's important for me to talk about, because if that happened whenever Frankie was like 13 years old, because my dad committed suicide when I was 12, and there was like the last 1 year, when I was like 11, they closed VFW down. That's from what I can remember. They closed VFW down, and my dad didn't have a place to go drinking anymore. So and I think I remember my dad saying that because he used to go there so often, and he ended up drinking at the house. So I think it's important for me to talk about because I'm 11, Frankie's 4 years older than me. Yeah, so Frankie had to have been no older than 14. So Frankie's about 13 to 14 years old the last time he got raped. That is pretty old for a kid. For a 13 or 14-year-old kid to be anally raped, that's fairly pretty old. For them, you not to say anything. I don't know how demented a child's mind can be broken being raped so many times and having these adults that are much larger than you that are doing this, that you end up letting people do that to you when you're now 13 or 14 years old. It happens to men in prison. But this is a little boy that Ken Cooper allowed to get raped because it was Sarah Cooper that played along with it because she can bridge, oh, that's my daddy. No, you see, I'm an angel, I'm Mother Teresa, that's what I am. And I think it's very important for me to talk about because this is in support of my mother and this is support of Frankie. I just went to the grocery store yesterday and I saw Sarah Cooper and she was laughing. She was laughing and smirking. That guttering, worthless piece of shit was laughing, and she was laughing because of my dead sister and everything that had happened with my mother, Frankie, and how she got away with this. I saw her over at the grocery store, and this worthless bitch was waiting for me, and my mother doesn't even know what the fuck is going on. And I wanted to talk about this because it's crucially important for me to talk about, because it's an entire cover-up. The police department and the white supremacists want to help with that worthless bitch and Ken Cooper and Kenneth. They're all mixing everything up and confusing it to protect their whites. And that isn't the truth. I am the fucking truth. I am the one sole protector. So what they do is they want to demote me and they want to derank me as much as they can so then everybody can start telling me, yeah, you too. Yeah, you too. No, it's not. But that's what they need to do in order to discredit anything I have to say. And that's what Sarah Cooper was solely responsible for, and Kenneth was solely responsible for doing. Because when I can't talk for Frankie and I can't talk for my mother, and time goes on, it's fuck you, get fucked in your ass. Ha ha, it's time for a record deal with Headcrack. So I wanted to talk about this because that police officer, he knew about the rapes. He was talked to Jason and talked to Richard Nicholson. He will tell you. I don't know. I have assumptions that Richard Nicholson really didn't go to prison for. I don't think he went to prison. I don't think he went to prison. I think this is sort of maybe a lie, but in my opinion, I mean, you never know. I'm not saying it just could have happened, but it's because his dad was a Mexican, and his dad and his wife, and they his mother looked very pretty, and. I thought it was important for me to say something about this. I think it's important for me to say something about this because Richard Nicholson was like the one that was saying something to me as well and saying, yeah, he was asking a lot of questions about you. So that guy, they knew about the rapes. And I want to say he knew something, either said something about Michael Jackson or it happened to come across or Michael Jackson's song came on. Because they had a clean driveway and pretty open space garage. And I want to say it's like a pretty big open space garage. Could have been 2-door. It's been so long, but when we went to that house, this guy was like, he was behaving like, you know how like when they feel emotionally distraught, not because they care about your life, because it's like we're gay, we do only good things, we're gay, we take in charge of things. He sort of had this paranoia about him, that in that particular fashion, he wasn't a paranoid person, but when he walked into the garage and he was just kind of squatting down at a lower extremity, there were signs that he was thinking that, yeah, this kid got raped. I don't want to bring that up. He's going to go tell other kids and other people. So he's behaving this way. I think it's important for me to talk about this police officer knew about it, did nothing. The punks, the bullying that Miguel was doing was continue to happen. They moved out of that house. I think the guy ended up dying of cancer. I think that fire department marshal, he ended up dying of cancer. It came back, and I think he got terminally ill, and he got diagnosed with terminal cancer. So I wanted to talk about that motherfucker knew about these rapes. and what was going on. So right now what they're doing is they're trying to, this guy that came into my apartment these last couple times, they're accusing me and trying to say that Ken Cooper and Sarah Cooper's had a police officer, said they had a guy over there watching out for Frankie, so they can split up and divide the blame and the heroism and credit to the white supremacists and for Ken Cooper and Sarah Cooper, and because they want to make sure they get away with, because in my opinion these people need to go to prison. Kenneth Cooper, Sarah Cooper, these worthless pigs. I could never express enough how disgusting of a worthless pig these motherfuckers and use these white supremacists. She was laughing at me when I went to the grocery store. I saw that bitch over at the fucking goddamn grocery store and was fucking laughing. Like, I could see. And so when I go to Walmart, just a second ago, I got back from Walmart about 2 hours ago. I'm out there in the park. This person walks by me and tries to make a mockery of what Sarah had just done, because they want to fizzle away the emotions. Because guess what? Celestina Melendez doesn't understand what's going on, and Frankie's retarded as hell and got fucked in the ass, and Madison is going to get it for white power and white American flag, for the white George Bush and white power. Oh, for the niggas right over there. Oh, Madison. So they're doing these different types of techniques to make sure that I visually see how they train me with this abuse. Because this is the same behavior that they did to Frankie, and Frankie's getting raped the whole time. It's the same behavior they did to Mom, why my mother has to be the way that she is. Because these faggots and these white supremacists are all doing this for their mascot, Kenneth Cooper at the radio station, and Sarah Cooper and Ken Cooper. They know that that pig, Ken Cooper's dead. He's been dead for a long time. He died a long time ago, and that's why they're putting all that trash and everything, because that's what white power is. That's what that goddamn motherfucker is doing. And so they're redirecting the situation with this pig. That motherfucker's burning in hell. I tell you, that worthless son of a bitch. And the president, George Bush's nephew out here that's living over here, wants to protect him and his identity. Because if you scum a detective and police officer at that magnitude, it's going to shun the society. They don't care. They need to make him look like a hero and diminish any discredit and make sure that Kenneth gets it. Because that's what's going on. So I wanted to talk about this, and I think it's crucially important for me to talk about, because this guy was no good news. They knew my dad was going to go to a nursing home soon, and now they just hit my chest with the electronic device and redirected me to Jesus Christ. Because they want to say, no, that's how we're going to get away with it. No, that's what Ken Cooper was, is Jesus Christ. No, that's what Kenneth was, Jesus Christ. No, bullshit. They knew that I was the sole person of this situation to protect my mother, protect my father, and tell the story of what these pigs had fucking done. Because they know that they have to keep quiet, because it's other people that were going to continue raping me, hopefully, like they did to Frankie. They're going to keep going after me with this situation. So I need to talk about this. Most of this you can't verify, but you can verify Richard Nicholson, Jason Beckwith, Larry, and that corrupted police officer that knew. There's nothing that ever changed. That fire department guy, he lived there since I've ever known, since I was a kid. Since I was a kid, that motherfucker lived there. That guy died. I want to say you can look up this. I want to say he died of, he got colon cancer, and then he got treated, and then he recovered, because I want to say Jason is the one that told me, because we went over there, and then like 6 months or a year later, I don't know how, Jason was driving by on his bike, happened to having a conversation with someone at that house, and said that a guy diagnosed him, he got terminal cancer. So I want to say that this is how the scumbag piece of shit Sarah Cooper and Ken Cooper are working in teams in secrecy when Frankie's being anally raped. They don't want to scum a nice little old, pretty old, nice little old, old bitch that was as disgusting of a face that she, in her eyes and being, to what she was laughing over at what was it, at Market 32. So I wanted to talk about this, and I think it's crucially important to protect my mother, to give credit, because I know Frankie's in a mental retarded state. I know that's what happened. I strongly believe something happened to him. he is not in any formal state of mind. There's no way, because that only becomes the profitable gain of Sarah Cooper and Madison and Kenneth. White power, white stand, white, keep it white. Now get everyone attack me, Frankie, and my mother, get the money, all Michael Jackson. Keep those safe. White power does it again. Time runs out, you can't talk about the story anymore. Because you not only you don't remember, but the fear that you're being held liable because now someone has now bought you a house. You owe them to keep your mouth shut. And that's why my mother's in the situation that she's in. So I wanted to talk about this, that I think is very important. This police officer knew for several years, and I'm getting these flashes that I remember seeing this pig. Like when I was like very young, I remember looking down there, and he got out of his car and quickly ran into his house. And that's hard because you can't verify that. That pig, he's dead now, and his fucking wife. That Larry guy, he may be still alive. I don't think he's alive either. You know, he was already between 25 to 30 years old, and I was already 10, so he'd have to be like 65 by now, 60 years old. So I think it's important for me to talk about. That was 30 years ago. He would have to be 55 to 60 years old. So I think it's important for me to talk about, because Frankie continued getting raped. I saw the family lived at that house for a very long time. I was about 9 years old, no older than 10, when that fire department showed up and that incident happened. By that time, when Michael Jackson shows up at McDonald's, I'm 5 years old. Everyone knows what this guy fucking did. You're telling me that this police officer don't know what's going on? The fire department doesn't? He just happened to be, and this guy would run into his house and run like doesn't want to get involved. And you will never be able to prove that. And that's what upsets me, but this is what I have to say about it. Now, Frankie's having his anal rectum ripped open beyond anything you can imagine, so that Kenneth can look cool at the radio station and play detective, and so he can be hip-hop and look real nice and cool and do this and that. And they're all, these white supremacists and these faggots are all protecting him, recreating his identity, that's not who he is. No bullshit. And I think it's important for me to say this, because that's what these motherfuckers are doing. That's what these assholes are fucking doing. And the President of the United States is covering up these rapes because he feels sorry for his green-eyed white boy that wants to claim, you know, the faggots and wants to, nobody understands what the fuck was going on. And they don't give a shit because they know that this is how they're listening to my conversation right now, and they're beating the fuck out of me with electronic devices, redirecting me to that fucking crucifix. And the reason they want to do that is because they want to continue the rapes and killings and excuses for Kino 97.9 The Beat and Madison, all the white pretty girl with the princess. So I think that it's very important for me to talk about. Frankie's having his ass ripped open beyond anything by 250-pound men. These guys are fucking huge. They would, in a lot of cases, these guys would probably whip most of the people at a fucking grocery store in a real fight. These guys are muscular. They're benching. Miguel could probably bench 250. He weighed 250. He easily could bench 250. This guy over here did lift weights, and he was like in his 50s and late 40s. Skived. That guy was probably benching like over 300 pounds, 350 pounds. This guy was massive. This guy was very muscular. So I want to say that Skived, I was told that he mentioned, I don't know if he's trying to scare my dad, but he said that he gave his bench number, like how much he could bench, and he said he weighed like 275, 265, and he was 5'11". This guy's, you know, between 5'10" to 6 foot, but he's my height. He's about 5'11", right on the dot. He's my height, but 275 pounds. It's not fat. It's a lot of it's muscle. Most of it looks bulk muscle. So I think that it's important for me to talk about, because I'm the last voice that Frankie's going to have before I could go to my fatal end. And I can get cancer, and everything goes downhill, and they're going to kill me. They're going to intentionally crucify me. They're going to sacrifice me for the goods and profitable gain for Sarah Cooper and Kenneth. And I think it's important because, you know, it's in my efforts to talk about Frankie. because Sarah Cooper was laughing, and all these white boys and all these white motherfuckers are showing up, and they're just, this is the same exact behavior, I'm telling you. Exactly what they're doing to me is why Frankie didn't want to say anything. Why my mother doesn't want to say anything. And very little information they're going into detail about because of that. I'm going to the grocery store. They're just trying to, these people want to get away with what they did for the leader Michael Jackson and their American white flag. This has nothing to do about, whatever garbage you hear about American flag and Congress, all garbage shit. Because that's all about white power and for the niggas. Because if the blacks, whatever they got, Mexicans have very little equity going on, if any. There's no Mexicans that are nothing over there. So I think it's important for me to talk about, because we only received harsh punishment and brutality because of what this was going on. That is a primest example of what this faggot did. I will say this, there's no way to verify it. 100%, I remember walking and looking down the street, and this guy was very fast and hurrying up to get in his house when he saw me looking at him, letting me know he doesn't want me to see him or get involved. And it wasn't fast. He was trying to hide. You could tell his body he was trying to hide. So I want to talk about that because, the money in the house are gone. The rapes are gone. Frankie's in a wheelchair. Sarah Cooper's laughing 3 days before my father's birthday. Her father's birthday. It's just, stupid, Frankie got raped. Your mother's stupid. She played angel over my dead sister. Because Sarah Cooper was trying to take ownership over my dead sister. I swear to fucking God that she was doing this to my fucking face at the hospital and on more than one occasion. This is what this worthless bitch is. I'm telling you, she is the most rotted pit to the core of a fucking, she's just almost as filthy as this motherfucker Ken Cooper. And it is far beyond it for me to put in my accept, but this is the only way that they're forcing me and abusing me to accept, because they want their white boys and they want their faggots, and they want to stay to cover up their homosexuality and the secrecy of what they had their life going on. That's their mascot, and they don't want to lose anything for it, and they're not going to. The time and the rapes are gone. They just want to poison, contaminate everything that they can. I'm trying to retain myself from getting involved in any of these pigs, because that's what they're doing. They can tell on their face, their eyes, they're not there for anything for me. They're there for their faggots, and whatever credibility they want me to think, it's just to make you believe that for a moment. And it's just, this is what they're doing the whole fucking time, all the way to death. That cross don't mean nothing. This is just a profitable exchange. The way they shoot these electronic devices at me and redirect it, they're playing a guilt trip. That's why every time I went to a grocery store, every time I went to the gas station, every time it's all about Sarah and Ken Cooper and Kenneth, because they know they don't want it to go to Kenneth, because he works for the blacks. He's different. No, he's representing Mexican. So anyway, I wanted to talk about this because I'm the last voice for Frankie, and I believe that, the God that I believe in is greater than the one that, Kenneth is worshiping and thinks he exists. This is, to take those type of actions is so self-indulged, and so self-absorbed in greed and selfishness that you deserve to die to do some shit like that. To mutilate dead bodies, like he claimed, and I talked about this, that he used Robert Girardi that was killed in a car wreck with Ever Rangel, and he made up a story saying that he got into a car wreck and 2 other kids died in a car wreck and some of them got burned or some other shit. And I don't even know that had something to do with Alicia being half her face burned. So I talked about that already, but I don't know whoever was talking about all that shit. So, like I said, I think it's important. The magnitude was pure hate coming from these. They were just milking me, because Kenneth knows he can use the police officers, and he can use what was going on with the faggots that were coming at me at my job site or wherever I was living. That's why he felt so confident enough to stand in front of the doorway and say, "Don't fuck with that white blonde girl." And I didn't associate with these people. But I wanted to tell you, that's what was happening. Because someone had contacted him, and that's how he's going to say what you're going to get and what you're not. So I want to say this very crucially important. I'll leave this video with Sarah Cooper was right over there laughing. And it was the grimmest of boiling. I enjoy making you suffer. The power of the devil, Satan, tastes so, yeah, evil. Like, this person was full blown in the eye contact and face like that. Like, it's poison inside that person. Disgusting, filthy, disgusting shit. Right over there. And all these faggots and these other people are following to defend and allow that to happen. This is why Frankie doesn't want to say a single word. 12 homeless, 10 confirmed, 12 if you can confirm those 2 raped Frankie. That's 12 fully grown men ripping his ass open. Letting him know hip-hop, because he's Kenneth, and Madison's white power going to get it because she's a nice, pretty little girl. So I wanted to talk about the times lost. And the longer the output of this, yeah, it was a lost fight for me, Frankie. You know, I really feel saddened because I really would have liked to have Frankie around me with Jillian and his twin. Frankie would have really liked it. The unique behavior, how Frankie's personality is, would have been so beautiful and unique. It's something that I'm going to miss for the rest of my life. It's just the way that how he would have behaved and liked being around that particular type of situation. So I think it's important. And they're trying to claim Frankie's my dead sister's dead body and Frankie's rapes and now disabled brain. And they were showing some white boys that were coming by me and they were sort of walking like a gang leader. And he said, "Yeah, you too." So they're trying to poison me, saying that, you know, they own Frankie, they own the rapes. That's what he was. No, that was not. But that's how they threaten me and abuse me, because when I'm walking and stand out, so they ejaculate my colon, so then I become obedient and I become believing into what they're telling me. And if I do that, then what happens is, remember, you didn't know about Frankie being fucked in the ass all those fucking years when he's crying, walking his bike all the way from home, thinking about Ken Cooper and Sarah Cooper, how they were real life heroes. Now feel sorry for them. Remember the Bible?